Hello students, welcome to the discipline of social psychology, a pure or basic branch of psychology. Let us embark on the journey of social psychology to get insights into the reasons for our social behavior. Today, we are starting our module 1. The objectives of this module are to understand the concept of social psychology, to learn about the nature and scope of social psychology. Do you know when social psychology came into existence? At the time when the world was undergoing a great upheaval. A significant number of facts in the fields of linguistics, anthropology, ethnography and archaeology needed interpretation, and this need manifested itself in the development of two sciences which are regarded as parents of social psychology, that is psychology and sociology. Social psychology emerged at the interface of psychology and sociology in the early 20th century. While psychology analyzes the nature of humans, sociology analyzes the nature of society. Social psychology, on the other hand, analyzes the nature and the relation of man to society. Then, what is the sphere of social psychology? The sphere of social psychology is social and its focus is individual. It is the study of individual in a particular social situation. This social situation can be person to person interaction, person to group interaction and a group related to the another group. A social psychologist uses scientific methods to study how we perceive people and social events, how do we influence others and get influenced, social relation and communication and group dynamics. You all know, as Aristotle said, we are social animals. We live in a society and societies manifest themselves through the activities of people, through communication and interaction, which in turn shape the behavior of individuals. When we study social psychology, it enables us to understand the dynamics of human behavior in social situations and what effects do these situations exert on individuals and in what ways these situations get changed by the behavior of the individuals. You will appreciate the significance of social psychology when you understand how it intrudes social life by providing practical recommendations in various areas. The practical needs of the discipline have been increased by the increasing demand for efficient management in the areas of industry, education, health, mass communication system and struggle against antisocial behavior, public services and sports, etc. Now, let us understand the definition of social psychology. Social psychology is the scientific study of how people think about, influence and relate to others. Look at this slide to understand this definition. For example, when I said social psychology is the scientific study of social thinking means how we perceive ourselves and others in a particular situation. It also refers to what we believe about ourselves and others. Social thinking also includes what are the judgments that we make about a particular situation, and it also includes our attitudes regarding a particular policy. So, when social psychology also studies the influence of presence of others in terms of culture, pressures to conform, persuasion and groups of people. Now, the third aspect regarding the social psychology definition is how we are able to relate to others. When I said relating to others, it can be in terms of prejudice, aggression, attraction and intimacy and helping. From this definition, we can say that social psychology provides answers to many questions that frequently come to our mind. Similarly, social psychology answers to the question, would people be cruel if ordered? For example, if I give you a stick and order you to beat up your classmates whenever they give a wrong answer in the classroom, how many of you are willing to do it? Would you obey my orders without questioning, or would you think about it? How many of you remember what you had read about Hitler? How did Nazi Germany conceive and implement the slaughter of 6 million Jews? And those evil acts occurred partly because thousands of people blindly followed the orders given by the Hitler. They put the prisoners on trains, herded them into crowded showers and poisoned them with gas. How could people engage in such horrific actions? Were those individuals normal human beings? All these responses to these queries were studied by Stanley Milgram, who experimented why and when people are high on obedience to authority. Another dilemma often encountered by the people is to help or to help oneself. A study was conducted in one of the streets of Columbus where bags of cash fallen down from a truck and money was scattered across the street. Some motorists stopped to help and tried to return back the money that they have collected from the road, while many more stopped to help themselves and finally disappeared with huge amounts of money. By now, you might have understood the subject matter of social psychology. Now, let us see some popular definitions of social psychology. Floyd Allport in 1924 defined social psychology as the scientific study of the experience and behavior of individuals in relation to other individuals, groups and culture. A similar definition was given by Gordon Allport in 1968, who defined social psychology as a discipline that attempts to understand, explain how the thought, feeling and behavior of an individual are influenced by the actual, imagined or implied presence of others. Byron and Sells in 1989 defined social psychology as the scientific field that seeks to understand the nature and causes of individual behavior in social situations. Now, let us understand the nature of social psychology. The first element is social psychology is scientific in nature. So, social psychology is also scientific in its approach in dealing with a range of problems. For example, there may be many explanations which come from the common sense theory about interpersonal relations, about the feelings of love, jealousy, aggression, altruism, that is helping behavior, and the roles of individuals in the group. But the difference between common sense approach and social psychology as a scientific study is social psychology adopts scientific methods, and all these methods which the social psychology adopts involves 3-step basic processes in order to arrive at a particular result. Now, let us see what are those 3 steps which claims the social psychologist to be scientific. For any scientific method, the first step involves collection of carefully made observations. Once we made the careful observations, we try to gather information about certain issues and processes which we are aiming at study. The second step is, in order to understand what we observed, we need to integrate in a particular order and then make a statement of general principles. And the third step is utilization of these general principles to predict future observations. So, many studies revealed certain results. Based upon that, we generalized how people think, feel and act. Now, let us focus on the second element, that is social psychology studies experience and behavior of individuals. As of now, like whatever we have discussed, by now it might be clear to you that human behavior is a result of the interaction of mental states and immediate situations. According to Kurt Lewin, behavior can be viewed as a function of person and the environment. That is, he has written it in the form of a formula: behavior is function of P and E. Now, consider the following questions. Why do people help others? What is jealousy? What are its main causes and effects? The first question is about the overt behavior, that is, which we can directly observe that particular behavior. The second is about an emotional state. Social psychology studies not only the observable behavior, but also the emotions, the attitudes which cannot be directly observed. Then the third element is groups, which can be individuals in different groups or individuals in organizations and culture. Social stimulus situations have certain capacities for change which might not be present in non-social social stimulus situations. Social stimulus situation and individual bear a reciprocal relation between them. Individuals act as both as a respondent as well as an active creator of the social situation. The fourth element which helps us to understand the nature of social psychology is causes of social behavior and thought. So, social psychology studies the behavior of the individual as well as theories about the causes and factors that might lie behind a particular behavior and phenomena. Different factors that affect social interaction have been studied mostly, and these are the action and characteristics of others, basic cognitive processes. These processes could be our memory, reasoning, the beliefs, ideas and judgments about others will also influence our interaction with the people. Ecological variables, that is direct and indirect influences of the physical environment. The fourth factor is the culture. Culture includes the norms that we are developed in our culture. The membership in various groups will also influence us. The last factor, biological aspects of human behavior and genetic factors, or call it as inheritance aspect, which is relevant to social behavior. Now, dear students, once we have understood the nature of social psychology, let us focus on understanding the scope of social psychology. Social psychology attempts to understand the relationship between minds, groups and behaviors in three different ways. One way is it helps us to see how the thoughts, feelings and behaviors of individuals are influenced by the actual, imagined or implied presence of others. This includes social perception, social interaction and many kinds of social influence like trust, power and persuasion. It deals with questions like how do small group dynamics impact cognition and emotional states? How do social groups control or contribute to behavior, emotion or attitudes of the individual members? How does the group impact the individual? How does the individual operate within the social group? It tries to understand the influence that individual perceptions and behaviors have upon the behavior of the groups. How does persuasion work to change group behavior, emotion or attitudes? The second way to understand the scope of psychology is social psychology helps us to understand the influence that individual perceptions and behaviors have upon the behavior of the groups. This includes looking at things like group productivity in the workplace and group decision making. It also helps us to understand the questions like what are the reasons behind conformity, diversity and deviance. The third way to understand the scope of social psychology is it helps us to understand groups themselves as behavioral entities and the relationships and influences that one group has upon another group. It asks questions like what makes some groups hostile to one another and others neutral or civil? Do groups behave in a different way than an individual outside the group? So, all these questions can be understood by studying the social psychology. Dear students, the scope of social psychology is very large and the psychology principles, that is social psychology principles, are applicable in everyday life. Let us see how it is applicable. Social psychology has the potential to illuminate your life, to make visible the subtle influences that guide your thinking and acting. Social psychology also helps us to understand many ideas about how to know ourselves better, how to win friends and influence people, and also to transform closed fists into open arms. So, principles of social thinking, social influence and social relations have implications for human health and well-being, for judicial procedures and juror decisions in courtrooms, and for influencing behaviors that will enable an environmentally sustainable human future. So, social psychology is all about life, your beliefs, your attitudes and your relationships. Finally, the scope of social psychology can also be understood in terms of big ideas contributed by this discipline. Let us see what these ideas are. The results of many research studies, the conclusions of thousands of investigators and the insights of hundreds of theories can be boiled down to a few central ideas. If you can just look at this slide shows that scientific study of social psychology focuses on social thinking, social influence and social relations. All these domains will help us to apply the principles of social psychology in our day-to-day life. When I said social psychology contributed certain big ideas in certain aspects like social thinking, that means it includes how we construct our social reality. We also focus on our powerful social intuitions and how attitudes shape and are also shaped by the behavior. Similarly, social influence also speaks about how the presence of others, presence of the groups shape the behavior and how dispositions, that is personality, shape the behavior. When it comes to social relations, social behavior can also be regarded as a biological behavior. Feelings and actions toward people are sometimes negative and sometimes positive. So, all these insights are given by the investigators who have done lots of research in social psychology, and all these inputs are applicable in our day-to-day life. The first big idea is we construct our social reality. I think you agree with me when I say all of us have an urge to explain human behavior and attribute it to some cause, so that we can say our behavior is very orderly designed and it is very predictable and also controllable. In a same situations, you may react differently, I may react differently. This is because we think differently and our experiences are also different. Second aspect is all of us are intuitive scientists. That is, we try to explain everyone's behavior with accuracy so that no one is offended and they will also accept the explanations given by us. For example, when someone's behavior is consistent and distinctive, we attribute that behavior to his personality. Our beliefs about ourselves also matter a lot. That is, do we have an optimistic outlook? Do we see ourselves as in control of things? Do we view ourselves as relatively superior or inferior? Our answers influence our emotions and actions. How we construe the world and ourselves, definitely they matter. Then the second important big idea that is contributed by the social psychology is our social intuitions are very powerful but sometimes perilous. Social intuitions not only influence ordinary citizens but also presidents of countries when they are in times of crisis. They influence gamblers at the table, jurors assessing guilt, and also HR personnel screening the applicants for their particular position that they advertised. So, we can say thinking occurs not always consciously, but also off stage, that is out of sight. Our intuitive capacities are revealed by many studies on automatic processing, then implicit memory, heuristics, instant emotions and non-verbal communication. All these things explain that always we do not consciously work on certain factors. The next important thing is social influences shape our behavior. We speak, we think. How do we do all these things? Right from the childhood, we have been observing the people and we feel like imitating them. We feel like getting connected to them, to belong to them. Naturally, we try to imitate their thought process, their emotions and also the behavior. Our cultures help us to define our situations. For example, the standards that you developed regarding promptness, that is the discipline, frankness and the clothes that you are wearing vary with your culture. Now, personal attitudes and dispositions also shape our behavior. I think you agree with me when I say we are not passive tumbleweeds, merely blown this way and that by the social winds, but our inner attitudes affect our behavior. Our political attitudes influence our voting behavior. Our smoking attitudes influence our susceptibility to peer pressures to smoke. Our attitudes towards the poor influence our willingness to help them. Apart from this, personality dispositions also affect our behavior. A same situation, but different people may react differently. Emerging from years of political imprisonment, one person exudes bitterness and seeks revenge. Another person, such as Nelson Mandela, seeks reconciliation and unity with his former enemies. So, attitudes and personality influence our behavior. The last concept, that is the last big idea, is social behavior is biologically rooted. In fact, the 21st century social psychology is providing us with growing insights into how our behavior has the biological foundations. Many of our social behaviors reflect biological wisdom. Our inherited human nature predisposes us to behave in ways that helped our ancestors survive and reproduce, and we carry the genes of those whose traits enable them and their children to survive and reproduce. So, nature endowed us with an enormous capacity to learn, to adapt to varied environments, and we are sensitive and responsive to our social context. If every psychological event, that is every thought of us, every emotion of us, every behavior of us is simultaneously a biological event, then we should examine the neurobiology that underlies social behavior. In fact, social neuroscientists do not reduce complex social behaviors like helping, hurting to simple neural or molecular mechanisms. Their point is, to understand social behavior, we must consider both under the skin, that is biological, and between skin, that is social influences. All of you agree that mind and body are one system, they are not separate. Stress hormones affect how we feel and act. Social ostracism elevates blood pressure. Social support strengthens the disease fighting immune system. We can say we are biopsychosocial organisms, and we reflect the interplay of our biological, psychological and social influences. To conclude, we have understood the concept of social psychology, that it focuses on understanding the causes of social behavior and on identifying factors that shape our feelings, behavior and thought in social situations. So, we can say social psychology is the scientific study of behavior of individuals in social and cultural context. It explains and analyzes the causes behind behaviors which may be related to one or more than one factor. The scope of social psychology can also be understood from the big ideas that is contributed by social psychologists.